So unless you're a big user of social media, you may not have realized that something pretty big happened with Equifax recently. There was a massive data breach. Over 140 million Americans were potentially affected. While you were watching all this hurricane coverage or this or that, understand there was something going on that could have potentially had a much larger and greater short-term and long-term impact on your lives. I mean, this is big. This is massive. This is not funny. This impacts people of all shapes, all sizes, all colors, all backgrounds. It's basically Americans are taking it right up the keister. Plain and simple. So what do we do about this Equifax data breach? Well, first thing is we need a full federal investigation, like a real full federal investigation. We need to find out how this happened, why the company, bottom line, allowed it to happen. You could say, well, maybe they just weren't good enough. That's not a good enough reason. How the hell did this happen? Why did this happen? Why was it allowed to happen? Why, once the company discovered it, did they take so long to announce it? And in that time, conveniently, certain executives started selling off their stock without doing an appropriate 10B-5 filing that's required by the SEC once you get to a certain level within the company, in part to prevent insider trading. There needs to be a full investigation to find out how the hell that happened. All of that happened. And fines need to be severe and significant and send a message to the entire industry and other companies as a whole that if you screw up and you put your guard down, the fines are going to be severe. And then you're still going to have to fix the problem anyways. You're going to continue to have regulators breathe down your neck. This is exactly why we need regulation. In an ideal world, we wouldn't have to have any of it. But because companies do dumb crap like this is why we need to have it. And if we find out that there were criminal reasons as to why the delay announcing it, criminal reasons into the stock sales, then people need to be arrested, tried, convicted, and put in prison for a message to really be sent. As consumers, what you should do is not buy any Equifax products. And frankly, this carries over to the other major bureaus too, TransUnion and Experian. All these credit monitoring services are a freaking scam. All you're doing is parting with 15 to 20 bucks a month for no reason. Why? Because clearly it doesn't make a difference. The identity protection specifically, why the hell would you pay Equifax ever again to protect your identity? So you were paying them and they still had a big breach. So basically you paid them, if you want to think about it this way, if you're one of the adults that got conned into buying their identity protection service for like 15, 20 bucks a month, I'm sure, you basically paid them to have your information compromised. How stupid do you feel now? Especially when you have like CreditWise from Capital One, discovering their credit scorecard. Other companies offer that type of stuff too. Whether it be CreditWise with the Vantage Score, Discover with their credit scorecard and the FICO score and other places. You got Credit Karma, even with their FACO score. It still allow you some type of insight into what's going on with your credit reports that you don't need to be paying these charlatans at Equifax or TransUnion or Experian any damn money. Why? So that way Wall Street and their investors can make money off of you? And then your information still gets taken from you anyways? Give me a break. The whole concept of information sharing needs to be revisited and revised. There should be an option to opt in, not just the option to opt out. Because we all know you can say, well, technically you have a choice. No, you really don't. They have to get your information if you ever want to get a place to live, whether that be an apartment or a house, if you want to get a car note in your name, if you want to get credit cards, lines of credit, utility bills, other things, including jobs where they pull your credit report and you don't have an option to opt out of that. You're basically forced into a place that unless you tell them you don't want them to share, they're just going to do it anyways. And how ridiculous is it that the major credit reporting agencies, these bureaus, are able to profit off of your information that for all intents and purposes you really don't have a choice but to give them to begin with. And then you have to go through all these hoops in order to opt out. That's ridiculous. And what's even more ridiculous is your name in some ways you could classify almost as an intellectual property. Why in the hell should somebody else be able to profit off of that and you don't get any royalties? You don't get any kickbacks from that. If the bureaus are able to sell off your information so willy-nilly giggly tits, then there should be nothing wrong and it should be a law that they have to give you something. Instead, they will sell your information and profit off of you And then they'll find enough dolts that are naive enough and gullible enough and borderline, honestly, stupid enough to buy their propaganda that they bombard you with on the website saying, buy this, buy this, buy this, or you can't do anything else. You got to buy, 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 buy. And then you still pay for these other services while they're profiting off your name. And ultimately, if they can't secure it, they should be able to share it. Credit freezes must be free at all times. How ridiculous to protect yourself, you have to pay a price for a service, a system that you really didn't choose ultimately to be a part of. You were left really with no choice if you wanted to live in today's modern society. Give me a flipping break. We also need to get employers out of the pulling of credit report business. Not to mention just simply because of the number of inaccuracies. It's at least a quarter to a third of all credit reports have some form of inaccuracy on them. Imagine how ridiculous it would be. You didn't get a job because your credit was bad because there were mistakes. Because you're a junior, your dad or somebody else in your family used your social security number or had a similar name and it got attached to you when it belonged to them. That stuff happens. There's all types of stuff that happens. Believe me, I know. And this can be used as a potential measuring stick for people getting jobs. Give me a freaking break. But imagine this. Imagine working a job for years, and then they redeploy it. What does that mean? That means it's getting outsourced to the Philippines, China, or freaking India, where they can pay somebody $2 to $3 an hour if that person's lucky, no benefits, and then you're left with the hose and the shaft straight up your arse. Then, after months, you struggle, you're out there trying to find a job. Ultimately, you find one that's close in terms of salary and benefits to what you were previously making for the job that you didn't choose to leave, that you were forced to leave because of corporate greed and the world's digitization that these corporations love to push, which means they can pay fewer people, less money, less benefits, and increase their profits. It's almost like Morganization of a corporation in the 21st century is what it really is. Imagine all of this, and then you go, and everything else is great in the job application process, the interview process, and then you don't get the damn job because your credit sucks, because you were unemployed for 6 months to a year, and you fell behind on bills. How ridiculous. Imagine getting sick, or one of your immediate family getting sick, and you go thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt because of this person's cancer, or your cancer, or heart attack, or whatever the case might be. And then you try to do better for yourself and you go to apply for a job and you can't get that job because you got sick and you had to file bankruptcy, or you got so buried in your ass because of the stupidity of the American healthcare system that you're never going to get out of that hole, and you're trying to dig your way out of the hole and you get held back. Imagine getting yourself into debt, which unfortunately a lot of people do, and I've been there before. And then part of the way you try to get out of debt is to make more money and do better for yourself. So then you go to apply for a job in part where you've always had great employment history. There's been no issues. You just want to make more money. And they deny you that level of position because your credit isn't any good. And believe me, in my early 20s, that happened to me before. I didn't get as high of a job as I could have because of my credit. Now, justice is ultimately served all those years later when I'm still out there in the workforce and that company no longer exists. But imagine how much that sucked at that time to be told you can't get this job at this level because of your credit. Didn't matter all the positive job references I had, didn't matter the positive job history, didn't matter anything else. I got denied because of that. That sucks. And that's why employers have really, to me, no business at all with the interviews, the job applications, the references, the background checks. There's no business pulling anybody's credit, especially because that positive employment history most certainly is not going to report and factor into your Vantage or FICO scores in any way, shape, or form. Give me a freaking break. And ultimately, too, if somebody, it ties into this, if somebody pulls your credit, they should have to report your credit. Many places only pull your report, and then the only time they report anything about you is, of course, as this world so often is, it's about the negatives. It's about the delinquencies. It's about the charged off accounts. I think about landlords and utilities specifically in this way. You could be paying every time a month for years, but they ain't reporting shit. They were able to pull your credit and hit you with that inquiry, which is something that could potentially impact your credit score, but they don't have to report any of the positive history. So you're getting dinged with absolutely no way with something corresponding directly to that inquiry to overcome that or compensate that. You have to wait the 2 years for that inquiry to drop the hell off. Give me a break. Or even if they say, well, you know, it doesn't matter as much once a year. Bullshit. Ultimately, if they don't report, they don't need to see it, period. It should be a requirement, because what happens here is because of a lack of credit history and the challenges of being able to get credit, especially when you have little to no credit or the credit you've previously had are poor, all you end up doing is continue to get stuck in that debt cycle. You continue to get stuck in the spot, which is, believe me, by design, because the cost of all of these products, the cost of credit is much higher because you're viewed as a higher risk. But anything you can do positively, such as paying your rent on time every month, paying your utilities on time every month, isn't going to matter, and it's not going to make one hell of beans of difference, except for the fact that you might have had to come out of more money up front for an additional month's deposit on top of what you already would have had to pay for the new place, deposits to get your utilities and everything else, because your credit was substandard. But the things that you could do, in part, that you have to do on a month-to-month basis that could potentially help your credit, they're not required to report, and they usually don't report, and it's bullshit. Ultimately, if there is an open account where there is an inquiry, it must report, period. That must be law, because so many people get screwed by this horrendous double standard, by this horrendously gaping flaw. It's been something that's bothered me for years, and if you think about it, it should bother all of you too. What really should bother all of you, though, is the credit scoring methods must be public and standardized. This is ridiculous, because this is no joke. Credit reports impact and potentially ruin people's lives and their standard of living. People's lives are affected by something that they really have no choice but to be a part of, but they can't even know specifically exactly how the scoring is done, because that's confidential company information. That's industry secrets. We don't want our competitors knowing. Bullshit. And even if you want to sit there and defend these jerks and talk about, well, they give you estimates talking about utilization rates and the amount of debt that you have and the types of debt that you have and your longest held account and your payment history and all of that, they're still estimates. They're still not exacts. And I've seen it for years working in the banking industry. I've seen people with very similar history where one person has one thing, one person does another thing, and their scores vary by 60 or 70 points. And the point is, there is no real rhyme, logic, or reason for why it happens, but it does. And the industry has been able to insulate themselves where they're basically able to do this with no real oversight and nobody asking any tough questions. That must end, and that must end now. When this impacts and potentially ruins so many people's lives, there must be some visibility and accountability, period. Because you cannot just use that private company crap, because ultimately, like with Equifax, they are a publicly traded company on Wall Street. Then there needs to be some accountability, especially with the number of American citizens and Americans in general that are caught up in this and impacted by this and really don't choose to be. That's bullshit. And as much as I hear about the opportunists like Senator Bernie Sanders and especially Senator Elizabeth Warren and everybody else, maybe the heart is in the right place, but they clearly don't grasp the full depth of the issue here. And the fact that we would continue to allow these crooks and these charlatans like Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, and I'll even throw a Novus in there even though nobody even knows they really exist and nobody gives a crap about them. But the fact is there definitely is a fourth credit bureau. Who knows how many other secondary type of bureaus there are. It will make your head spin, believe me. And the fact that they can basically hold your life at ransom with a number without having to tell you specifically 100% exactly how it's calculated, knowing that there are potentially errors, knowing that there are certain things that no matter what you do are never going to report on your credit. So it impacts your ability to improve your credit score without, oh, guess what? Forking over more dough, which could potentially keep you in the same debt cycle in your spot, which is all the design to begin with. Stop praising Senator Warren and Senator Sanders and all of this and tell them to get a damn clue and really deal with the issue here. Because it's not just about data, it's about everything about this industry that absolutely sucks. And what really sucks too is a lot of people don't realize, and I saw this selling cars over the years, I've seen it in the banking industry, I've seen it in other places too, is all of these people that will walk in all cocksure. Man, I went to Credit Karma and my credit score is a 750. Ding dong, that's wrong, dumb dick. Because oftentimes, not to mention they were really using kind of like more of a FACO score, not a FICO score. The fact is that the credit score oftentimes that you get is not the credit score that the lenders will actually use when working with merchants and retailers to determine your creditworthiness. How stupid is that? And I've seen this happen. I literally used to see people in the car dealership would bring in their credit report or pull it up with their score from that day, from the bureau, mind you, that said they had a 720, which was important for them to be able to get the best tier for the lease, to get the lowest interest rate and the lowest down payment. Then when the dealer would pull the freaking bureau, the scoring metric was entirely different, and they came back with a 650. Oh, sucks to be you. Who thinks of this crap, and who thinks this crap is okay? The credit scorings and the standards, the methods must be public. They must be standardized. Do not give me that competitive advantage bullshit when it impacts really every American adult that's out there. But ultimately, the only other thing you can do at this point as a consumer is take control of your own credit as much as you can. Go to annualcreditreport.com. You can pull one from each of the three major bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You can pull a free report, obviously not a score, because again, you got to pay to get your freaking score. Or you got to have somebody else pull it so that way you can find out what your score is. That's something else that should change. Because your life comes down to that 3-digit number in so many cases. But you have to pay for it no matter what, even though you didn't choose to be measured as a person by that metric. It's ridiculous. But go to Annual Credit Report. Once a year, you can get all three bureaus. Do what I do. When I want to pull it at any other time, I'll use each of the sites. You got to find it because they're too busy trying to sell you crap. I'll use the filing a dispute option to file a dispute on anything if I so choose as an excuse to get more free credit reports. Typically, I get about 5 to 6 free reports each year from them. And you know what? Why? Because fuck them. That's why. Clearly. Why should I feel bad about it when they clearly don't feel bad about profiting off of insider trading and having 140 plus million Americans be affected by a data breach that they did too little to prevent? Take a look at your credit report and dispute any and all delinquencies, collections, charge-off accounts, judgments, what have you, with the credit reporting agencies first. Go directly to them, because sometimes that can work. You can get stuff dropped off. Doesn't always work. Doesn't work as well when it's original creditor. Good luck trying to do that with your student loans, because I'll tell you right now, that's probably not going to work. Good luck trying to get anything like a judgment or a student or a child support or anything else like that off of there. This is probably not going to work. But if you have other collections and charge-offs and delinquencies, it might work. Put the onus on the bureaus to go to the merchant, to go to the creditor, or in some cases the original creditor, and make them prove that this is valid, that this is legitimate. And then if that doesn't work, then use what I've used for years, one of my best friends, the validation of debt letter. Not a verification of debt, but a validation of debt, where you can find all types of templates on the internet. And if you want questions about how to do that and how to get some of this old crap off of your credit, because believe me, it doesn't do you any good to start paying on something. Let's say you have a debt that's 5 years old and the statute of limitations in your state is 7 years. Just like typically, it's going to report on your credit somewhere 7 to 7.5 years after your date of first delinquency is going to be that cutoff time. So after 5 years, you start getting all that guilt inside and you start trying to feel like, oh, I need to be adult about this and pay it off. So you start working out a payment arrangement. Guess what you've done? Now that you've started paying on it, you've re-aged the goddamn debt and it's back to square one again. So it can stay on your report even longer with that negative history on top of that. Guess what? Guess what? If you miss a payment and you default on that, then guess what's going to happen? So don't feel bad about it, because these companies don't feel bad about screwing you over. It's time you fight back and screw them over. It's clearly Congress, your elected representatives, they don't give a crap about you. So you got to get in where you fit in. So hit me up on Twitter, @TheJeffSchlegel is the Twitter handle. If you're not sure how a validation of debt letter works, you're not sure how to go about it, you're not sure what it means, when to use it, when not to use it, what validation of debt letter template is best out there to help clean your credit and crap up. Because believe me, not all of them are the same. And sometimes some of them that you'll see out there go too far and are not good and will actually anger an original creditor in particular and potentially accelerate the process of litigation and judgments against you. But ultimately, you got to fight back the way you can. But other than that, what else can you do? Honestly, not much. Make sure you opt out of any and all information sharing that you can with the three bureaus at this point. Don't buy any more of their crappy products. Try to minimize how much you actually have to apply for any credit or share any information with anybody. Get your reports from annualcreditreport.com. Use the loophole of filing a dispute to get your free credit reports more than once a year, like the big guy right here does. Dispute any and all incorrect information with the bureaus, because what the hell, why not? You might be surprised how much you can clear off. And then after that, come see me and we'll figure out something else. But what you really need to do is you need to reach out to your elected representatives, hit them up on social media, hit them up by calling their offices, visiting their offices, doing whatever the hell you got to do, and tell them this is wrong, this is messed up, and this needs to be changed. And what you're trying to do is only a start. It's only cracking the surface of a much bigger cancer that affects so many millions of Americans every single day. Tweet this video to Bernie Sanders. Tweet it to Elizabeth Warren. And Cory Booker, well, maybe not so much because he kind of likes the banks, so he'll kind of like the credit bureaus, but hell, maybe he's on it. Send it to Kamala Harris. Send it to all of them, because they need to know what they're trying to do is only a small part of this and doesn't really deal with some of the deeper seated fundamental issues that continue to screw over millions of Americans every day.